Well, I got a boatload of issues with Star Wars over the years. Guys, I've read books and I've seen many stories treated with more respect and care. Boba Fett has an emotional connection with people who enslaved him. How is this connection legitimate? You could actually chalk this up to Stockholm Syndrome, which is illegitimate because he was enslaved and he's choosing to go back instead of being free, which is already a stretch for a character, but for Boba, of all people, a huge stretch. This is why I assess that this just doesn't work. Why would someone, especially someone like Boba Fett, choose to be a slave again willingly when he could obtain his freedom? How is he growing an emotional bond for people who choose to enslave him? That sounds like Stockholm Syndrome, and it feels illegitimate when it's played up as an emotional connection. I don't see it. I see it as Stockholm Syndrome because they enslaved you to achieve such a thing, and it wasn't even their intention to achieve it. It was you who ended up feeling that way unexpectedly. This is my assessment of that show. It's a little different with Brian, as he was alone surviving in a plausible and believable way, from a book series known as Hatchet, which is a survival concept. There was no tribe, it was just him alone. Then later on in the books, he tried to reintegrate with society, and he couldn't. His psychological attachment grew for the wilderness, and this became so strong, he could no longer reintegrate into society. So eventually, one day, he even decides to leave and return back to the wilderness willingly in Brian's hunt. He even has a dog. Just on a side note, but in the Return to the Wilderness book from Hatchet series, he had to return yet again, and it goes horribly wrong, and he has to survive because a newscaster or businessman wants to cash in on what he went through by showing people how he actually survived. It'd be huge. Brian in this great book, because it's actually really great, even if it sounds a little stretchy, but it's really good, has pieces of this attachment and lack of being able to integrate tackled here, and it's really good. This is what leads to Brian's hunt. I didn't get to read too much, but it was so good so far. The Hatchet series is great. I think it won awards. This is a story where a sort of concept like that worked well, but maybe that's because Brian didn't meet a tribe of people. Also, just because he meets a tribe doesn't mean they'll try to enslave. Like because Boba meets a tribe against his will as they kidnap him, so he's forced to survive with them. The context here is different. Maybe since the context is different, it works better in Hatchet than it did in Boba. Again, different context, so I wouldn't compare the two, but this is the closest thing to similar I could find. But Boba Fett, a tribe, it's not like Brian met a tribe, so it's different context, but similar idea, survival in crazy circumstances. Brian even had to reintegrate into society. Boba's got weapons, new armor, guns. He's got all this stuff. You're telling me he can't handle some grunts. But when he was with the Tuskens, he beat this one dude with his bare hands. So how is he getting his butt handed to him? By grunts. Why doesn't he hire professionally trained soldiers to get the job done? It doesn't make sense. Also, he is the most lethal and deadliest bounty hunter in the galaxy, so you could assess that he would have some way of killing people. He's really good at it. So why is he struggling with people who aren't even bounty hunters? So when he's with Tuskens, he can fight, even with a limited weapon. But with his full armor in Mando Season 2, he demolishes stormtroopers with a single weapon, then uses his rocket and blaster and crushes them. He can't handle these grunts? That contradicts even what you established about his character in Mandalorian Season 2. In Season 2, Boba sees the Foundlings the same way he saw Tuskens. That's why he wanted to protect them given the context of the book of Boba. This is actually good. I just think it's funny how he was enslaved and he grows Stockholm Syndrome. This at least explains his character shift in Mandalorian Season 2, which was jarring, and I didn't know why. Now I know why. You see, Boba gets mad at one of the Mandalorians who sees him as nothing more than a clone of his father, but given the context of Attack of the Clones, he saw Boba as his son, and he saw his father as his father, so this would upset him, and he fights, and it's damn good, and it's a damn good standoff. But man, I hate this scene. It reminds me of when Vader showed up in Rogue One, just to do the most obvious thing that you would expect him to do, which is just to slaughter everyone. And it's like, if you want to do that, at least have him be a character in the story. To just have him for like 2 scenes, and then he just does that. It feels so nostalgia pinchy. You see, he doesn't turn his lightsaber on in A New Hope, but he conveniently turned it on just moments prior to that to do that awesome shit. Yeah, it looks cool, but it's forced. It's just nostalgia. And given the context of A New Hope, why didn't he turn on the lightsaber in the movie? His lightsaber should have just been off to match the film. And a scene I hate so much was this forced moment when Luke shows up and heeds the call of Grogu, which is strange because Luke didn't mention this in The Last Jedi. But even still, it's forced. And just there for people to go, oh, look, it's Luke. Whoa. No story, nothing deep, like at least. Not until Book of Boba, and that story was awful. What they did with Luke and Grogu there was so bad. So then he shows up and fills the same role that Vader did, except he's trying to save someone. Then he shows up, takes Grogu. Then, if you watch the Book of Boba Fett, they just meditate and do some poses and stances. We wanted to see training in the Force. And to see this felt empty because isn't this supposed to be Boba's show? But it wastes time. It didn't accomplish anything. I don't even know if Grogu learned anything. Also, if Luke took Grogu, then as I predicted, he has to be with Dan Djarin. Because it's unexplained why Grogu is not with Luke, or any story of them being together is not explained or told or even mentioned in the new trilogy. So why would he never mention this? He mentioned the prequels, but not this? Man, I hate this scene. It's forced and nostalgia pinchy. A lot of people loved it, though. I couldn't stand it. I hate this scene. I think I've met a few people who hate it, too. This is what I'm laying down. And this was Tarragon. And I am now out this piece.